Hey everyone, it's Duncan from overlandjournals.com and welcome to the second part of my 13-part series on overlanding for beginners. Today I'm going to talk about vehicles. And I'll also share with you how I got myself 34,000 kilometers worth of fuel when I bought and kitted out my 4x4. So stay tuned. Welcome back. Now, if you missed the first part of this series, I'll leave a link above and I'll also leave a link in the description below. So go and check that out. I talk the outline of the whole series and what it is that I'll be talking about. So be sure to catch that up. So before we go ahead, I wanted to share this with you. No, I'm not an alcoholic, but I do like to drink. 2017, we crossed the Simpson Desert with some friends, and what I did was I took one of these empty beverage containers, bottles, and as we progressed through our Simpson crossing, I collected sand from various parts of the Simpson, and as you can see, the different layers. If it's clear on the camera there, so the different layers, I collected sand as I went along, and I also listed all the places we crossed, or the major places we crossed. So Adelaide, Coober Pedy, Dalhousie Springs, the Simpson itself, put the coordinates, if that's clear on the camera there, and then we eventually ended up on the Big Red, and then I also got everybody who went on the trip with me to sign. So there you go. So that's all the people that went with it, and yeah, that trip we called ourselves Team Mad Max. So yeah, that's my souvenir from the Simpson Desert. With this video and with the whole series for that matter, I'm going to keep it very minimum when it comes to technical aspects of things, because a lot of those who wrote to me or spoke to me about doing this series, most of them are not very technically minded people, but they want to get out there and start experiencing overlanding. So I'm going to keep the technical side of it as very low as possible. And also I want to mention, all these things I talk about in this entire series and in this video as well is based on my experiences, and some of it are my opinions. So please don't take it as the gospel. It's not, but my idea is to share my experiences and my knowledge with you. But please also do your own research and gain more information so that it enriches you. So the question comes, do you have to have a 4x4 to get into overlanding? And my answer is not necessarily. There are places you can get to in a two-wheel drive vehicle. There are places you can get to in all-wheel drive vehicles, and then of course there are the places where you have to have a four-wheel drive. So if you're getting into overlanding for the first time, then work with what you have, or work with what your budget allows in terms of getting a vehicle. So if two-wheel drive is all you can afford, or what your budget allows, or maybe that's all you got at this point in time, get into it. My encouragement is get into the lifestyle first. See how you go, and as you progress, you can change vehicles and go further up that the type of vehicles that you get. So don't go and invest a whole lot of money if you are not sure, or if you're just getting into it. In episode 7, where I talk of trip planning, I'll also talk about how you can find places where you can get to in a two-wheel drive vehicle, or all-wheel drive vehicle, or the more serious stuff where you need a four-wheel drive vehicle. How you find these places, the kind of places I've gone to in South Australia. So I'll talk about these. That's in episode 7, which is a dedicated video for trip planning. But in this video, I'm going to say you don't necessarily have to have a four-wheel drive. A two-wheel drive will get you to many places. We are blessed with having well-paved roads, maybe not blacktop, but there are gravel roads where a two-wheel drive vehicle can get to. So can an all-wheel drive. Of course, keep in mind you need when you're going off-road or any form of off-road, you need a decent amount of ground clearance. So your regular sedan car may not exactly give you access to a lot of places, but then there are vehicles in the market that do offer a reasonable amount of ground clearance, so you can get off that beaten path within limits, of course. So that needs to be kept in mind. If you don't have any such vehicle, you don't have anything that has the decent ground clearance, then again, you don't have to go out there and first thing spend all that money and buy yourself a 4x4. One of the easier ways to do it is for the first few trips, rent a 4x4. There are a number of rental companies out there that will sell you either partly or fully kitted 4x4s. So rent yourself a 4x4, do some trips, and see if this is the lifestyle for you. If you begin to enjoy it, then of course you can look at it more seriously, whether you're going to invest, how much you're going to invest, what kind of a vehicle is suitable for you. So renting is a very good way to get into this lifestyle. When it comes to four-wheel drive vehicles, as I said earlier, you get all-wheel drive vehicles and the more serious 4x4s, or as we also know them as SUVs, sports utility vehicles, where all four wheels are driven. The difference is, with the more serious all-wheel drive or four-wheel drive vehicles, you also get something with the all-wheel drive vehicles don't have. That's what's called a transfer case. I'm not going to get very technical, but what the transfer case does is it offers you the option of low range gearing and high range gearing. Without going into too much of technicalities, with that kind of gearing, you can get a lot more traction into your wheels. So low range, high range will help you in tricky situations, in sand, in mud, and in snow as well. I haven't done any snow driving, but it will be helpful in such situations. So that's the difference between an all-wheel drive vehicle and a 4x4 or SUV, which is a lot more serious in terms of getting into off the beaten track, into more deeper country. Almost all modern vehicles, they come with traction control. I'm talking about off-road related vehicles. They come with traction control, and traction control is very effective, and they work very well, and they make this vehicle, even the most entry level of vehicles, they make them pretty capable. So traction control will get you far, but at the same time, you need to get, if you want to get deep into country, rough terrain, then of course a 4x4 also with traction control aids and so on is something that you need to think about. Something else you need to consider when you're looking at purchasing a vehicle is also, what is this vehicle going to be? Is it going to be purely for your overlanding travels only, or is it also going to be your daily runner? Now, if it is going to be a daily runner, then you've got to have a balance. So then the type of vehicle will be determined by those requirements. If it is going to be parked at home until the next trip comes along where you're going to go overlanding, then the requirements are completely different. So these are things you need to work out, and then from that point, that will help you to then figure out which type of vehicle is going to be more suitable for your requirements. Now, to give you an example, if you get a big bulky vehicle which is heavy and more off-road bias, and if you're going to try and use it as your daily runner, it can be not so enjoyable. Now, for example, my 80 series, I only use it purely for off-road travel, but on the odd occasions when I have to use it in the city, going quick city run, I hate it. I absolutely hate it because it's tall, it doesn't get into most underground parking places. In fact, it doesn't get into any of the underground parking spaces or undercover parking spaces. Parallel parking, forget it. It's just such a mission to get it into tight spaces. So it's not so great in city running. But then again, it doesn't matter to me because I only use it for going off-road, period. But if I had no choice, but I had to have that vehicle doing both purposes, then my approach would have been completely different, or could have possibly been a different type of vehicle. When it comes to four-wheel drive vehicles, there are many different types you can look at or consider. But before getting to that, another thing that needs to be considered is petrol or diesel. Now, many would say diesel is the way to go, and I tend to agree with them up to a certain extent. Diesel gives you far better economy than a petrol-powered vehicle. Diesel engines, by nature of their design and what they're designed to withstand in terms of the workings of a diesel engines are far more durable compared to petrol motors. However, I have over the years seen petrol engines doing certain brands of petrol engines that do well into 500,000 kilometers without giving any problems. So that's another thing to keep in mind. Diesel vehicles will need more regular servicing as compared to a petrol engine. Usually a diesel requires servicing every 5,000 kilometers, whereas a petrol can go every 10,000. Of course, the regularity of your servicing will vary depending on the amount of off-road traveling you do. So more off-road travel, more regular servicing required. But in general terms, diesel requires more regular servicing. So there you go. So that means more, obviously the servicing cost is higher than in a petrol. Also, one of the advantages with a diesel is that, especially like here in Australia where you travel to remote, the chances of finding diesel supply or even meeting other travelers, if you needed some fuel, travelers who are carrying diesel with them, the chances are far better compared to diesel. So if you only have a petrol vehicle, then your places that you can travel to may be limited, not necessarily, and also you may have to carry a lot more with you than if you were in a diesel. So keep that in mind. However, towards the end of this video, I'll talk about why I went against all this and I purchased myself a petrol. The factor you may want to consider is, at today's prices, this can always change, petrol per litre, at least here in Australia, is cheaper than diesel. So that might also be a factor that might come into deciding whether you want diesel or petrol. If you're buying brand new, it doesn't make an enormous difference. However, if you are buying pre-owned, then the price difference, the purchase price difference between a petrol vehicle and a diesel petrol can be quite significant. Of course, it will vary from market to market. I'm not very conversant with markets outside of Australia, but here in Australia, the price difference can be quite significant. So that's another factor you need to consider. Now to the different types of 4x4s available in the market, whether you're buying brand new or pre-owned. There's the wagon type, and then there's pickup, so as better known here in Australia as utes. Now in these you get different variations as well. So you get the short wheelbase wagons and long wheelbase wagons. Short wheelbase wagons are usually 3-door, so 2 doors in the front and 1 at the rear to get your cargo in. And the long wheelbase, it's 4-door plus 1, which is 5 doors basically. You've got 4 doors to get in and out on the sides, and you've got 1 at the back. So same with similarly with utes or pickup trucks. You get long wheelbase, short wheelbase, and you also get single cab or dual cab or double cabin as it's known, where you got space to carry more than 2 people, whereas a single cab will only carry 2 people. So these are the different, and manufacturers are constantly bringing out various other variations as well. In the utes, you get, over here in Australia, we get the crew cab or king cab, where it's like a cab and a half. So you can carry 2 people and then a little bit of space for cargo. Can't really put people in one of those things, but so you get various different variations. So based on your needs, you may have a family, or it might just be the 2 of you. So based on your needs, you need to look at the vehicle that suits you best. But what you need to keep in mind is when you do touring, the more remote that you go, the less access you have to supplies. What that means is you've got to carry more with you. So depending on what you're looking to, what type of traveling you're looking at doing, think long term as well, because initially you might do very short trips where you don't have to carry a whole lot. You might be you might be doing camping plus a bit of lodging, so you may not need to carry much. But however, as you progress in your overlanding lifestyle, you may look at carrying more and more with you. So keep that in mind. Think a little bit long term, because buying a vehicle is an investment. So think in those terms and then decide which one suits you best in the short term as well as in the long term. Manufacturers will also offer you different engine options, so that's something also you need to look at, because also, depending on what you want to carry, how much you want to carry, are you looking to tow a caravan or tow a trailer, you need to look at the capability of that vehicle. So these are things you need to look at and consider when you are looking for an off-road vehicle. Also keep in mind, the bigger the engine, obviously the fuel consumption is going to be higher. So if fuel economy is something that's very important to you, that's crucial to you, then you got to play the balancing game. But again, bigger engines give you more power to carry more weight, and to tow as well. So another factor that needs to keep in mind when you're looking at purchasing a vehicle. The question of automatic or manual. Now the diehards will tell you manual. Do not even consider an automatic. Now I do agree with them to an extent, because manuals give you a lot more control, whereas automatic, the gearbox does its own thing. But again, in my case, I eventually went for an automatic, and the reason for that is again based on your requirements. So if you're going to use your vehicle to do off-road touring as well as at the same time do a bit of city driving, it's a no-brainer really. With all the traffic that's building up in our cities, automatics become a lot more convenient. It's a convenient factor, and modern day gear auto boxes can be as capable as manual boxes, even though with a manual you got a lot more control. And also at the same time, it's like here in Australia, when we travel to destinations, we got to do long distances on the blacktop before we even get off-road. So, when you're on that long drive, you're driving for 700-800 kilometers or more, I find it a lot more convenient to have an automatic transmission than a manual, and I don't want to keep pressing the clutch and changing gears. Put it on cruise control, let the gearbox do its job. Why not? And quite honestly, over the years, I've had both manual and automatic transmission vehicles, and I've always done touring. I haven't done hardcore rock climbing kind of off-road. That's not what my channel is about, and that's not what I've been doing. The differences, the capability differences between automatics and manual, there's not a whole lot really. In my years of traveling, almost 60% of that period I've had automatics, and for me they've worked, they've done the job. I've been happy with them. Next important question: new or used? Okay, that on part depends on your budget. Now there are many advantages with buying new. New means you get so much more life out of it. Comes with warranties from the manufacturer, and a lot of the vehicles these days come with a considerable amount of free servicing over a period of time. So obviously new makes sense if that's what your budget allows. But also keep in mind that if you get a brand new vehicle and you're planning on doing off-road touring, overlanding, you also got to be prepared to get scratches, get dents, stone chips, and so on. So if that doesn't bother you, then brand new, go for it. Also keep in mind, when you buy brand new, now here in Australia, any capable four-wheel drive vehicle you're looking at upwards of $35,000, more like 40,000 Australian dollars if I'm not mistaken. So that's your starting point. You buy the vehicle, and then of course whatever modifications that you will want to add on to it, that comes at an extra cost. It can be added to your finance. Certain manufacturers of accessories and vehicle modifications do offer it as part of your finance package. You can do, but then again it adds up, so you need to keep that in mind. Now the nice thing about second-hand or pre-owned 4x4s is that, first of all, if you get a very well looked after second-hand vehicle, it'll still give you, depending on the mileage it's done and so on, it'll give you a considerable amount of life still to go out there and enjoy your overlanding. You won't have to worry about getting it dented or scratched here and there. It's a pre-owned vehicle after all. And also with pre-owned vehicles, if you are adding on accessories and you have to, like I do sometimes, you got to drill a hole there and here on the body or inside one of the panels, it doesn't really worry you too much, as compared to having to drill a hole into a brand spanking new vehicle. So there are advantages buying pre-owned as well. Another advantage, which I'll talk in detail when I talk about my decision to buy 80 series, is when you buy pre-owned, as you know, in the second-hand market, prices drop or fluctuate considerably as compared to a brand new vehicle. You can get a lot of value if you get your research right, and if you find the right vehicle, you can get a considerable amount of value in that vehicle. So there's an advantage in going for pre-owned. When you're buying pre-owned, one thing that's important is to check out the vehicle. Now, there are certain, when I buy my vehicles, I do my own checking. I'm not going to go into those technicalities in this series. I may do that later in another video. But for those of you who are not very technically minded, but you want to go pre-owned and you want a good condition vehicle, my advice would be get a friend who's knowledgeable in motor mechanics, or an organization that does this kind of service. Get them to check it out for you and tell you what condition the vehicle is in, and you know how much more life you're likely to get out of it. Check it out and then look at that value aspect as well, based on the price that you can negotiate from the seller. Once you've decided on a vehicle that you're going to purchase, or you already may have it, then the next question comes: modifications and accessories that you need for your vehicle. Now, if you're in the market and you do some research, there's so much you can buy. There's heaps and heaps of accessories and modifications you can buy, and it'll drive you crazy. Whenever I see something and I'm shopping online, I try to fight temptation because I just feel like buying them. But you don't need all that, right? There are certain basics I would recommend that you have, accessories and modifications. And next Thursday's episode 3, will be dedicated to modifications, accessories. So watch out for that one where I talk in detail. At the beginning of the video, I said that when I bought my 4x4, which is my 80 series, and I kitted it out, I got myself 34,000 kilometers worth of fuel. Well, I'll explain that to you, and here's where I'll share my story with you and the thinking behind why I went for a Petrol 80 series. In my previous video and a couple of my previous videos, I said, and if you watch those, I said to you, it's the most thirstiest of 4x4s you could buy, and it's on top of that, instead of going diesel, I went petrol. Okay, I'll tell you the story behind this. So when I started out, I wanted a 4x4. Now, first of all, why a Toyota? Well, the thing is, I'm not advocating that you should stick to Toyota. That's not the whole idea here. I'm not brand biased. My personal experience, over the years have had many different types of 4x4s and different brands, but Toyota is something that stuck with me because of their reliability. So why an 80 series? Why petrol? Okay, so let me start with why an 80 series. I have limited knowledge on motor vehicles. My mechanical knowledge is not that great, and something I don't really understand too much is the modern day vehicles electronics. Whereas the more mechanical the vehicle is, it's easier for me to troubleshoot. So that was the first thinking I had, an older vehicle where if I had no choice but to try and fix something out there in the outback or when I'm overlanding, then with my limited knowledge, I had a better chance of getting it fixed than a more modern vehicle where there's a lot of electronics, which I don't understand. But you may be completely opposite to me, you may have a lot of knowledge in it, that's all fine. Secondly, why petrol, whereas everybody else is going for diesel, and I just talked about a whole list of advantages of having diesel a little earlier in the video. Well, here's what happened. So as I said, I was on a budget, and whatever I do in life, I like to get maximum value out of anything I do or anything I purchase. So I did a whole lot of research, and yes, the mindset at the beginning was to find a diesel vehicle. But the more research I did, the more I discovered that, at least here in our market here in Australia, petrol was, the price difference between a pre-owned petrol 4x4 and a diesel 4x4 was considerable. Now, that in itself was kind of becoming a bit of an attraction to me, but I still kept looking for a diesel. And then eventually, after much research, I think I did about 6 months of research, when I eventually came across this vehicle, which is my current 80 series, and it was a petrol, but it was in good condition, very well looked after, and it also came with some of the basic accessories and modifications, which would have added extra almost $7,000-8,000 had the vehicle I bought did not have any of that. So that was an added attraction. So just to give you briefly, when I looked at the vehicle, it already had a bull bar, it had a winch, it had a roof rack, it had a snorkel, it had a 2-inch suspension lift, it had 33-inch mud tires, though I did have to replace the tires. They were almost fully worn out. It had a drawer system. It also had a dual battery system with a dual battery manager, and the previous owner already had the center console fridge between the front two seats. If you check out some of my previous videos, you'll see I talked about the center console fridge. So to me, when I looked at the accessories this vehicle had, and considering the price difference between a petrol and a diesel, I was saving a considerable amount of money. So that became an attraction for me. So here's how the maths worked. When I looked at the price differences, bringing into the picture the accessories as well, and putting a value to these accessories, which I no longer had to pay for because it already came with the vehicle, the cost saving to me was almost 10,000 Australian dollars. At the time, what I did was I took this and I converted it at the prevailing rate of cost of fuel per litre, and that gave me almost 7,000 litres of petrol, if you kind of get the idea I'm talking about, right? So that then converted into, and this again, you know, in my case, this was going to be purely an overlanding vehicle, not a daily runner. So it stays parked at home until the next overlanding trip. So I took that saving and then I converted it into how much of kilometers it's going to give. And the 80 series petrol is not that great when it comes to fuel economy. You know, it's about 5 kilometers to the liter at best. That's about 21 liters per 100. But based on that saving, to me, the maths said it was going to give me about 34,000 kilometers of traveling. And what that meant was, looking at the number of trips I was going to do or hoping to do in a year, that meant I would get at least 4 years of overlanding before I'd used up that saving. So to me, it made a lot of sense. Yes, it consumes a lot more fuel than a diesel-powered vehicle. Yes, there are the chances of not finding petrol out there, depending on where I'm going, is higher. But then what that means is I've got to plan for it. So that's where the trip planning comes in. So in my trip planning, then I'm going to take those factors into account. But to me, that saving and that amount of fuel, the way I look at it, the saving was going to get me, was a huge attraction. So to me, that mindset and that kind of thinking, I felt that was giving me a considerable amount of value. So that's why I settled on a petrol-powered 80 series. So sharing that was, you know, by no means to do with the Toyota Land Cruiser 80 series, but it's more to do with the mindset I had and what justified buying a petrol 80 series that guzzles petrol. So hopefully that will, you know, kind of get you to look at your purchase from a different perspective like I did, and try and get that value out of it. So when I started out this series, I said that I don't want to keep my videos too long and bore you. The whole intention is to try and keep them as for a reasonable amount of time as possible, but get the basics across to you, especially those who are looking to get into this lifestyle. And I hope I'm achieving that. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed already, please do subscribe. The whole idea of my channel is to share with the wider community my experiences, my travels, and my knowledge. Now, if you may have any questions, please leave comments behind and I'll start the next episode 3, answering these questions. If you already have experience and if you're already into overlanding and perhaps more experience than I do, please feel free to share in the comments below. The more we share, the better it is, especially for the beginners. And look out for next Thursday's episode, which is overlanding modifications and accessories for your vehicle. Thank you for watching.